Welcome to this version of one of our videos that we're doing with Narrative Muse to give you all a sense of what it is that we do here. We're going to be talking about how Narrative Muse is amplifying underrepresented books, movies, and TV shows with tech innovation. And we're specifically here to do that today with Courtney Schafer, who is our lead data scientist at Narrative Muse. We aren't the best at this, so things might get a bit funky as we try and vision switch between all of the people here and videos and such. We're probably trying to be a little too techy, but bear with us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brough, and I am the co-founder and co-CEO of Narrative Muse. The other host of this Q&A that we're doing here is Nigel Lopez-McBean, who is also the co-CEO of Narrative Muse. So like I said, we're going to be chatting with Courtney, who's our lead data scientist, about the tech behind Narrative Muse, why it's a unique approach, the way that we do our content recommendations, and how this approach also allows us to learn about underrepresented content and audiences in really exciting ways. So I'm just going to give a tiny bit of a premise of what Narrative Muse is. We launched our first iteration at the end of 2019, and our vision is representation and belonging in entertainment. We know that audiences want a discovery portal for a diverse range of books, movies, and TV shows. And while we're doing this, we do it through truly personalized matches. We also know that the publishing and screen industry needs insight into what audiences want to read and watch. And so Narrative Muse is bringing these two demands together in one platform, serving both. We are New Zealand-made, we're a deep tech startup, and we're bringing the entertainment revolution. To begin, I'm just going to kick off to give you a sense of what we mean by that. Here we go. Hopefully it plays.
And the Emmy goes to Viola Davis.
You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there.
Back in the UK, Neighbours had their first black character, and my mom screamed and pulled me into the lounge to watch somebody that looked like me.
We take for granted how powerful media is, how you are portrayed and how others then view you within the society. And once we see that cycle, we can actually interject and create the reality we want to see.
We have extraordinary filmmakers that are forward-thinking to understand the importance of inclusivity, simply because our audience demands it.
What I saw as an author is that there were assumptions made about the content of people's work based on who the author was and their identity.
I will say that I am the first Black woman to win this prize.
All the hidden biases and echo chambers and issues that are keeping women and authors of color from reaching the audiences that they deserve.
Narrative Muse is a platform where people can go and find tailored recommendations of books, movies, and television shows to help you find content that represents your identity, rather than what you read or watched in the past.
And what's really exciting is that we're matching based on content itself, not whether something is popular, how many ratings it has. And so we're expanding into artificial intelligence along with human curation, and that is going to really give us the ability to reach really broad range of content so that we can make sure that things don't fall through the cracks.
On the one hand, you have underrepresented audiences getting book, TV, and movie recommendations, so you're activating demand. And then on the other hand, we're taking insights and working together with content producers, and it becomes this kind of virtuous cycle.
We should take the guesswork out of it, to have hard data about the groups that are locked inside boxes.
Currently, insights are used in a way to corroborate often what's happened in the past based on historical data. The thing that we have with Narrative Muse, which is incredibly exciting, is a genuine understanding of what it is that audiences want, the ability to have a more future view of interest, demand.
I realized what Narrative Muse was trying to do. I was like, this is a way to get at the root of the problem and kind of transform the whole paradigm.
So where to next? Change, an effective change.
One of the ways you can go about doing that is supporting Narrative Muse and supporting us in this equity campaign.
We're empowering diverse entertainment with revolutionary tech. The money invested will help expand our technology and drive the sales of audience insights. We invite you to help create a more inclusive media landscape by backing us.
Awesome. So that's just a little bit about what we're doing. And right now we are in the middle of a crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding campaign, but that's not what we're going to talk about just now. Right now, we're going to first get a sense of who's here on the screen, and we're going to talk about the technology. Nigel, can you give a little bit of an intro of who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nigel Lopez-McBean. I am the co-CEO of Narrative Muse alongside Brough. My background is I'm a content producer who's developed ideas for brands, platforms, and original content for studios. It's that work that really kind of informs my view of the work that we're doing here around underserved audiences and insights. I've also had a really long relationship with the application of research, insights, and data in creative environments, which is a big part of the reason I'm here.
That's awesome. And Courtney, can you give us a sense of who you are and your role at Narrative Muse?
Kia ora, everyone. I'm Courtney Schafer. I'm Narrative Muse's lead data scientist, and I'm originally from Colorado in the US, but I've been living in Aotearoa, New Zealand for almost 6 years now, and Lake Hawea on the South Island. My technical background is actually in algorithm development and machine learning in the space industry, but in my spare time, I write novels, fantasy novels, and so I have a lot of firsthand experience of the publishing industry, and so that was what got me excited about Narrative Muse and to come and apply my technical skills here.
And Brough, tell us about yourself.
So yeah, I am one of the co-CEOs here at Narrative Muse, and I am originally from the United States, have been living in Aotearoa, New Zealand for some time, where we have launched Narrative Muse from, and this is the home of Narrative Muse. A lot of our users are all over the world, though, which is really exciting. My background is that I worked in film and television as an editor for quite some time, and in that time had a real sense of a lack of representation that we were portraying on the screen. And as an avid reader of many years, I was also really interested in representation in books as well. So brought that together in creating Narrative Muse. So a lot of this is about Courtney. Yeah. Oh, go for it, Nigel.
Courtney is by far the most important person here. So what led you to Narrative Muse? It's the truth. It is the truth.
It's a genuine fact, Courtney.
Well, kind of, as I mentioned, being an author, I had seen a lot of the problems that people face in the publishing industry, both women in certain genres, authors of color, and kind of like almost all the genres. There's a lot of hidden barriers and assumptions and things that are still going on that people don't realize when you're just a reader or anything like that. Like I had no idea before I went through traditional publishing how many hidden barriers there really still are. And so that experience, when I saw what Narrative Muse was doing and going to this content-based recommendation system, I thought, oh my goodness, this would be so exciting to work on because it allows you to get at the root of the problem instead of trying to address the symptoms and trying to convince people to do things differently. You can show them a way that everybody can benefit, not just even underserved audiences, but everyone, readers, watchers, everyone can benefit from a better way for us to find the entertainment that we love. So.
And Courtney, so I know that you're kind of alluding to what Narrative Muse does differently, but are you able to talk about that, like what it is that's different about the way that we do our content-based recommendations?
Sure. Anyone who's been out there in the entertainment land today knows that most sites out there are using kind of what we call collaborative-based recommendation algorithms. That's where you might mark a bunch of things that you like or don't like, and the algorithm is going to try to figure out things to show you based on what you've said, and more importantly, based on what other people have reacted to in this content in the past. What that's doing is the algorithm is actually kind of trying to infer your taste and the content based on your behavior and the behavior of all these other people who've reacted and looked at this content. That's a great idea, except that it's really hard on content that doesn't match well with others, or new content, or if your taste isn't really matching well with the mainstream taste. There's a lot of reasons why that approach doesn't work as well as we might like. And so what Narrative Muse is doing is content-based recommendation, where we're saying, here's the user's taste, here is the content of this book or movie or TV show, and we are going to find you the content that you want based solely on the content that is there in the books, movies, and TV shows, not on how many other people have watched or read or loved this, or even what you've watched or read or loved in the past, because your desires today might not be the same as they were last week or last year or last month. So that's a really exciting approach, because it allows, like I said, not only for new content to reach readers and watchers quicker, for you to be able to discover things more exactly that you like to read and watch. I don't know if, I'm sure lots of people have had the experience of, I really feel like reading this particular type of thing today, but how do I find that particular type of thing without having to go around, ask friends, or, go on Reddit and do how do I find this book post, this kind of thing. If you had a content-based recommendation system like what Narrative Muse is doing, you can simply say, I really want to read a book that has this, 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 and this, and the algorithm will show it to you. So the reason that people haven't done it in the past is because it's the categorization of the amount of content. A large amount of content is a very difficult problem, or it has been. But recent advances in technology, as we all heard of ChatGPT and things like this, in the artificial intelligence realm, have made it possible for content to be categorized in a large scale much faster than it used to be. And so that's what's going to make Narrative Muse's approach be able to scale really well to the huge amount of content that is produced in any given year. And yeah, that's a really exciting technical challenge. And it's an exciting from the point of a reader and a watcher too, because being able to find better what you want amid the flood of content that is out there is, I know, I'm really excited about that as a reader anyway.
And like I'm hearing you talking about the way in which you're talking about GPT. For some folks that don't have a lot of knowledge inside of that deep learning or AI space, is there any way you can explain a little bit more about how we're looking to use that technology specifically for our content-based recommendations?
Sure. I think when a lot of people hear that we're looking into artificial intelligence or that we're doing deep learning here, what they immediately assume is that we're going to use it in the recommendation algorithm. But that's not actually what we're trying to do. We're trying to use it in that content ingestion problem that I talked about. For a content-based algorithm like what we're developing here to work well, it needs to be able to have a whole lot of content that has been well categorized in all the ways that readers and watchers might, do it as humans. Like, what type of characters are these? What's the tone of the book? What's this movie about? What themes does it have? Does it make you feel tense? Does it make you feel sad? Does it make you feel happy? Like all these types of things. Humans can do it, of course, but for a human to read the 10 zillion books that are, produced practically every month these days would be really, really difficult. So what the AI part of this is doing is we want to be able to take this these big text-based models that are already trained, partially trained, and we want to add our own training layer on top of that so that we can teach the AI to say, this book has these types of characters, this book has this types of themes, this book has like a, feels cozy when you read it, like all these types of things. Again, like a whole host of information that we currently collect through human curation on books, movies, and TV, we're going to be able to do through artificial intelligence. And that means that instead of ingesting a certain number of books, movies, and TV into our system per year, we can just, we can pull it all in, and that will explode our content library to a point where you can come in looking for all the, the really specific thing and be provided lots of examples of that really specific thing. That's what artificial intelligence is going to get us.
And something you're hearing from Courtney is we're definitely starting with the book space because that's a little bit easier of a problem to solve, but It is an easier problem to solve. And then we'll go ahead and expand our learnings into the screen space as well. So we will get there, but working one problem at a time. And this is a significant problem inside of the publishing space. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, well, also it's good to start on books because so many more of them are produced in any given year than the movies and TV. Like we have a hope of keeping up to some extent with human curation in movies and TV, but in the book space, you must have artificial intelligence, or you can't scale to the degree that would produce a really satisfying experience for your users.
That's a really good point. It's millions of books that are produced a year at the moment. And while we do have a lot of movies and TV shows, they're in the thousands per year instead of the millions. So that's a really good point. Yeah. Nigel, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about our insights.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about data. There's a very close relationship between data and creative decision making, and we know that data can have a fairly transformative effect on that sort of decision making. So, data, when used in combination with a degree of intuition, can kind of do really interesting things. So, at its best, it has the power to sort of empower ideas and the ability to sort of spark and change creative strategies. A lot of people aren't aware of the relationship between creative and data. For all those people that might be confused about why their favorite streaming show didn't last more than one season, can guarantee you that data had a big part to play on that. So I think what we'll probably do is just get Courtney to speak a little bit about how forward-looking data works and why there is this huge important difference between the backwards-facing data that kind of underpins pretty much most content recommendation engines and what we're doing here with forward-facing data. So my background's in media, and I've spent a lot of time as a content producer playing with data, using data to make decisions, and trying to understand how best to use that data to kind of make the right decisions, the fairest decisions, the most ethical decisions. What I've realized over time, and one of the reasons that working with Narrative Muse is so exciting and so important, is that the really missing link is that forward-facing data. So can you explain, Courtney, what the difference between backwards-facing data and forward-facing data and why that's important from a content recommendation perspective?
Sure. As we've alluded to before, and as you've just mentioned now, Nigel, like the whole industry, publishing, filmmaking, is based on this idea of we can predict future performance by looking at the past performance of things that are similar to a piece of content that is about to come out. That is definitely looking backward, and the problem with that is kind of twofold. One, you're not keeping up with what people are wanting in the moment. You're looking at what was popular a certain amount of time ago. And second of all, it ties into one of those hidden kind of echo chambers that goes on, where, at least in the book space, for example, a book that does well often does well because a publisher put their full force of marketing might behind it. But a publisher can only do that for one, maybe two books in a season. The rest of them will get much smaller amounts of marketing dollars. And so you end up with kind of a self-reinforcing cycle of, the book that did well because the publisher put their might behind it. And the next book that they choose is going to be like that book. And so they're going to put another, bunch of muscle behind that next one. But you're going to kind of stay stuck in this, they're putting the books that are all very similar to each other as assuming that those are going to sell well based on the past performance. But they don't really know, except for looking at what the sales are. Like, there could be a whole audiences out there that would love to have this other book that didn't get the big marketing might, but without that marketing might, the books that were like it in the past never reached an audience, and so the sales numbers look very small. And so that is kind of like the death spiral that hits authors who have a book that don't sell well, and then they kind of go into this problem where the bookstores won't order more of their next book because the previous one didn't sell, and that kind of thing can happen on a larger scale too, where, I hope the publishing industry is breaking out of this a little bit, but like, oh, a woman writing grimdark epic fantasy, that didn't sell very well, so we're not going to buy some more of those. But if you are looking at not the identity of the author and how similar the book was to something in the past, but instead looking at what is the content of this and what are audiences looking for right now? How big of an audience do I have for this book? Like looking in that forward moment instead of looking back at the past. And then you might be able to break down some of these barriers that happen that mean that, you just see it all the time, that great books, and I assume great movies too, never reach the audience that they should, who would love them, and being able to do that, help great things reach the audience that they love it, that helps everybody, not just the creators, not just the viewers, but the whole ecosystem will get so much better if that problem can be solved, of how do you hook up the people who will love this thing with the right thing.
I just want to make a quick connection for those who are watching, is that we were talking a lot about recommendations and our recommendation engine. And the reason why we're talking about forward and backward facing information, insights, and data is that we're using that forward looking data for our recommendations, but we're also beginning to use this forward-looking data for our content producers so that our content producers can make those creative decisions and can actually make decisions on behalf of particularly underrepresented and underserved content producers who otherwise there is no data for them in the past because that content hasn't existed in its full breadth, which means that there's not as much information. Just want to make that quick link for our folks about why we're talking about this.
That's a great point. And we should probably also just talk about how we're going about collecting this information, this unique information, and also what makes it so unique.
Right. So we ask our users a whole lot of questions about their taste in books and movies, their taste in the moment for what are you looking to read or watch right now? That information is stored. And then we also have the information that, of course, we have human curated about content and that we hope to expand into AI curation. But in terms of the user information, because we're collecting it in the moment and we're letting people change their answers and we're able to kind of see how people's tastes change and evolve over time, we can see what they're looking for this week as opposed to last week. So it's basically based on the questions that we choose to ask our users and how we store that information and produce the insights that Nigel is talking about out of it.
Amazing.
And is there anything when we're talking about this, because it's a really important topic at the moment, thinking about the safety and security of people's information. Can you talk to us a little bit about what we're doing with safeguards, with anonymizing people's information that they're providing?
Yes, we keep if you're a user of our site, your identifying information, such as your emails, your email address, and your name, and things like that, are all kept on one server. And then the preference data that you have entered is kept on a separate server. And there's an anonymized token that indexes that, so they're not directly linked. And then also, when we provide insights to people, we're not providing individual personal data at all. We are talking about trends and averages and things like this. So we're not taking anyone's personal information and giving it directly to anyone else. Again, we're talking on kind of larger scale about these data insights that we provide, and we protect the privacy and anonymity of our users through that dual server with the anonymized token mechanism.
Thank you. I know that's a question that is on the top of mind for a whole bunch of folks, just thinking through. Because
also, we allow our users to delete their account at any time. If you ever decide that you don't want Narrative Muse to keep your data, you are welcome to come and delete it, and it will all get deleted, and we will not keep it. So,
thank you. As far as the insights go, some of these questions are actually, I'm going to direct them at you, Nigel. We are working with content producers with these insights, but can you give an idea of what it is we're doing to support content producers with those insights, with that forward-looking information?
Absolutely. So the insights essentially form a kind of vital piece of almost advocacy for underserved audiences. So what it does, it allows us to help content producers understand market gaps, underserved themes, and spaces to create where we know from our data that there is significant demand. We're also able to provide identity-based content recommendations to these underserved audiences, and in turn provide anonymized insights about audience demand to help content producers better understand those audiences. So it's a really interesting way of connecting genuine audience demand with education and insight to content producers, because stuff's not going to get made unless they know that there's an audience and people who want to consume that particular sort of those content and themes.
That's awesome. And so we are in the middle of an equity crowdfunding campaign. Courtney, we really appreciate you talking to us about the technology behind all this. It's one of the main questions that a lot of people have is, how does it all work? What's going on in the background? And because our approach is so different, it's really, really exciting whenever we get a chance to actually talk about what we're doing here. And one of the things that we haven't actually mentioned is the why, like the why behind all of this, which is ultimately Narrative Muse is a purpose-led company where we are seeking to support and help underrepresented audiences. And as Courtney has said again and again throughout this conversation, like the work that we're doing here not only supports those who are struggle to find stories that represent them, it actually works for everybody. This technique is actually really powerful for everyone who's looking for very particular types of stories. But our vision is representation and belonging in entertainment. And we saw early on that, yes, we can provide recommendations to people based on your preferences, but if there aren't enough stories that match those preferences, then some more of that needs to be made. And sometimes it's just about going and finding and digging in the corners, because there are lots of these really great stories that do exist, but it's about getting out there, finding those difficult to find stories, and helping content creators actually make those stories. So it's kind of a full circle situation. So I guess the last question for you, Nigel, is we're inviting people to invest in Narrative Muse right now through our equity crowdfunding campaign. Can you explain why we're doing this?
To support our mission is the simple answer. Our desire is to use media tech as a path to social change within our industry. The money that we're raising will help towards expanding the capability of the platform to keep up with the demand that we're currently getting from users. It'll also be incredibly helpful in being able to build and drive the sales of our audience insights to content producers and people that are interested in the data and insights that we're gathering, and also ultimately expand our technology into AI-driven content data, because as Courtney alludes to, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that needs to be done to catalog and scale our content library, and we need to really work quite hard to find a way to do that that's both that's scalable and accurate. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen there. Go on.
Oops, sorry, bouncing around. I'm just realizing the time. That was me jumping the gun on that one. It's close to 30 minutes. We're hoping not to take too much of your time. Courtney, is there anything else you'd like to mention before we kind of close out this time together?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the big points. I just hope that other people can get as excited about Narrative Muse as I am.
Amazing.
That is amazing. Courtney is one of our absolute favorite people that we work with because of your background, Courtney, your understanding of the space that we're in, and we just really, really treasure having you part of the work that we're all doing together. So right now, we are doing this equity crowdfunding campaign with a group called Pledge Me. They are based out of New Zealand, and you can see the link to that campaign in this post. Have a look at that. We'll also add a couple of other links on here to support and help you with investing if you're interested. And some of the key things to note is that we're really excited to make this available to our crowd so folks can invest for as little as 30 USD and $50 New Zealand. So go ahead and check out the campaign. We'll go ahead and put that link in here. And I wish I had some splashy music to go out on, but I don't. Thank you so much to the Pledge Me team. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Courtney.
Amazing.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Courtney.
Bye-bye.